Republican Congressman Paul Ryan from Wisconsin. In addition to serving in our Congress, he is a member of President Obama's Debt Commission. He and I had a chance to speak briefly yesterday, and Paul, you presented 3 key principles to us as part of your way to deal with this. Entitlement reform, which we'll talk about in a second. Mandatory budget caps so that the Congress has some parameters to work inside so they can't keep making these buckets as big as they want them to be that day. And then the reestablishment, or maybe just the establishment, of fairness and transparency when it comes to our tax code and regulation. In my opinion, that last one, the establishment of fairness and tax code and regulation, which goes to the hole in the bucket and all the rest of this, is one of the biggest variables long term, and also probably the biggest hornet's nest, the hardest one to actually address. So for that reason, I would like to start there. How do you even begin the process of unwinding the hornet's nest that is our tax and regulatory structure, which is almost by design intended to be unfair as opposed to the fairness that you and I might aspire to?
Well, number one, I've proposed comprehensive tax reform, which gets rid of all these loopholes and deductions and gives us a broader tax base, lower rates, so we encourage economic growth, entrepreneurship. What I basically would say is we got to get the entrepreneurial economy started again. We got to get the real economy where people actually invent things, make things, produce things going again, so we can enhance productivity and spread economic growth and prosperity as wide as possible. We're replacing basic free enterprise with crony capitalism, where you have sort of big business using their largesse and their connections with big government to kind of stack the deck in their favor, to have the rules set for the incumbents in business, which are to erect barriers to entry against other would-be competitors that would knock them off the top of the hill. And so I'm really worried that many of us are confusing being pro-market with being pro-business. We need to have a free enterprise system where everybody has access to capital markets.
Let's talk a little bit about the one that gets the most conversation, and that is entitlements. Right. I've got my gigantic Medicare bucket here. You and I both know that medical spending is out of control for 5 to 10 different reasons. Social Security is here. For me, I put this lower on my list just because I see the corruption in the tax code, and I'm loath to go after Social Security when I know how much money is being sucked out elsewhere. But if you were to look at entitlements, particularly waste and the medical system, do you believe the government is even capable of enforcing fair rules that would incentivize the private sector or the public sector to spend less and get more, as opposed to spending more and getting less, which is our current plan?
No, not with the current policy architecture we have on health care. It inevitably leads to a rationing system. The only way when you have a government-financed, government-run system, which is what we have and we're going toward, is to, if you want to get costs down, you got to systematically ration health care. You take away the individual decision-making power of the patient and the doctor and replace it with bureaucratized rules and formulas, which can be gamed and rigged. The entitlements, those are the biggest source of our coming debt crisis. That's the explosion of debt, is because of the entitlements. Now, I've actually put out a piece of legislation. You can go to my website, AmericanRoadmap.org, which shows you, with CBO scoring, with scoring from the actuaries at Medicare and Social Security, a plan to actually totally fix these entitlements, wipe off their unfunded liabilities, make them permanently solvent, and you have to change the systems. You have to reform these systems.
I would argue that before you go after Social Security or any of the entitlement programs, that you have to plug the hole in the bucket, that it's not fair to the students and the retirees to continue to have the giveaways that we have that are depriving us of the economic growth and in basically enriching people who are providing no value. But I don't even know that you would disagree with that.
Well, I don't disagree with the point you're making, but from a statistical standpoint, every year we fail to fix Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, we go about $3 to $4 trillion deeper in debt. The unfunded liability compounds so fast on the entitlements. So just from a dollars and cents standpoint, if you delay entitlement reform by prioritizing something else in front of it, it's really costly. Let's do it all. I mean, we ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time in this country.
Defense. $744 billion. This isn't just Iraq and Afghanistan. This is a budget line that we spend, creates a lot of jobs in our country in the military complex. Some people believe we should get out of those wars. I'm one of those people. Other people believe we have no choice but to stay. Regardless of your point of view on the wars, it is clearly a big chunk of this bucket or this bucket or this bucket that we spend every year on this. How, Congressman, do you deal with this variable?
Well, the base DoD budget is a little over $600 billion because the wars are on top of that in that figure. So I think you got to go. Anytime you throw this much money at any government agency, there's going to be lots of waste. I would look at the operation and maintenance accounts. Those are really wasteful spending. You also have legacy costs with entitlement benefits within the Pentagon in the out years you got to address. And then there's the obsolete weapon systems that were sort of designed to fight the 20th century battles, the Cold War battles, that are legacy accounts that, because they're built in people's congressional districts, we keep building these things.
Right.
We got to go after those things. Those things don't make a lot of sense. There's clearly waste that can be gotten there. We got to make sure, though, that if we're going to deploy troops, whether you want to or not, that we're deploying them with what they need. We got to make sure that they get all the equipment and all the stuff they need to make themselves, safe. And that's so we can't short shrift them, but let's go after all the waste that's sitting over here in the Pentagon.
I couldn't agree more. Nothing insulted all of us more than when you see the deprivation of vital resources to our soldiers who are serving. Meanwhile, with this profligate spending in 10 other places. Congressman, a true pleasure to get some time with you. Truly. Paul Ryan from Wisconsin. Thank you, Congressman.
Sure.